First, I want to say thanks, Zach, for allowing me to have this opportunity. Um, my name is Hannah Bailey. I am a WC alumni. I graduated in December of 2019. I started my WCU journey. I'll just start from the beginning. First, I'm just going to kind of tell you guys about my journey, why I chose PA, kind of how I've got there, how I've got to now. So first off, I started Western December, or not December, Lord, the fall of 2016. I came in, I was actually like pre-vet. I I then shadowed a vet and I was like, oh, this is just not, I just don't feel this. This is not for me. But I knew I liked medicine. So it was my freshman year and I think somebody told me about PA. And anyway, somebody told me about like a PA and I didn't know what a PA was. I've always seen just my regular like primary care doctor. And so then once I learned about that, one of our family like friends um, is a PA and allowed me to shadow her in family medicine. So that kind of definitely like, I wouldn't say, but then I knew I was wanting to be a PA from then on. So I was a biology major, and I knew that was kind of the path to get me to me could be any major going into PA, but I liked science. A lot of the prereqs for PA school are in the biology major, so I did that route. And then mainly after I realized that's what I wanted to become a PA. Then I started looking at different schools. Looking at their requirements, their class requirements, GRE requirements, patient care hour requirements, and started to kind of align my future goals and what I needed to be doing with that, with the schools that I wanted to go to. Um, so I kept my grades up, and that was the main thing is making good grades. I also worked throughout. I worked in the Honors College office as a student worker throughout my 4 years there. I got my CNAs it was the summer of sophomore year. I became a CNA and I started working as a CNA on weekends, which is really important to get your patient care hours. That was one of the really important things. I chose the CNA route because it was quick to get. I could get it in one summer. Um, and so I liked that. And I could also work on the weekends pretty easily. Different shifts were available for that. Then I just worked and went to school, got my patient care hours, did some volunteering hours, did some more shadowing of PAs in different specialties. And then I graduated in December of 2019, and I started the Medical University of South Carolina here in Charleston in the summer of 2020. So yeah, so it's been a journey, but a long and fun, and it was worth it. So some things that I like have like tips on is, I wasn't like sure that I wanted to be a PA, of course, like my freshman year. I didn't know till like the end of my freshman year. One of the best advice I can give you is like go and shadow, because that really just kind of, I feel like tells you once you see it in action, it tells you if you want to do that or not. And so that's one of a big advice of mine. If you're thinking PA, another one is just as soon as you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do, start looking at schools, look at the requirements, um, you know, try to make sure you're getting those prerequisites in. Don't worry about the application so much so soon into it, but you'll get to that. Start getting your patient care hours sooner than later. You may have to take a gap year, which is fine. That definitely helps with getting patient care hours, but patient care hours is really looked upon when going into PA school. So you definitely want to start early with those, and different ways you can get your patient care hours. I wouldn't CNA, but like some of my classmates were EMS, some were medical scribes, some were, they weren't nurses. Trying to think of others. Med scribe's a big one. Um, any sort of like tech. I think some of them are techs,
You can
but
work as a paramedic, work as a non-major oriented emergency care technician. Um, So if you're an EMC major, you can't count those hours for most PA programs, but really anything that just requires certification and not a full degree, usually you can count. Sorry for butting in, Hannah. I just
No,
wanted
you're
to add those
okay.
for you.
You're okay. What else was I going to say? So the reasons I chose the PA path, one thing was the work to life, like work and life balance. You know, you have work, but you also have time to have a family and to do things outside of work, and you have more free time. Another reason was less school. So it's only 2 years. You get a master's degree. Your first year is didactic, which is what I'm in. I'm a second semester PA student right now. And then your second year is clinicals, your clinical rotation. So it's not all just book work, which is nice. I'm looking forward to rotations. But another reason was also like the student loan part, less student loans, going to school less. And there's so many different options you have as a PA. So there's a lot of lateral mobility and flexibility. You can switch specialties. I feel like this is a career that can grow with me and that I'm like always learning in. There's always something new that I could kind of switch to. I just don't ever feel like I would get bored if I go into emergency medicine. I'm like, oh, I'd like to have more like steady hours. I'd like to settle down. Maybe I'd go to primary care or whatnot. I just feel like there's the options are like endless, and that's really exciting to me. So yeah, so if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to ask me. I think that's all I had to say.
I had a question.
Yes.
I was curious, at what point in your 4-year Western did you take the GREs?
I took it my senior year. So not all schools require the GRE, and now some are even starting the PA CAT. And from what I've heard, we had like a Zoom meeting with different PAs, and I don't know if y'all know Michelle Nesky, but she's like the posh PA. She was on there. She works at MUSC. It was super cool. But she said like in 5 years, they expected 40% of those PA programs to be using PA CAT. But I think that's why it's important to kind of look at the schools that you would like to go to and that you would like to apply to early to see, okay, did they require GRE? Did they require the PA CAT? Do they not even require a GRE or a PA CAT? Because that could be an option too. So yeah, I took mine senior year. But you just need to look at also like there's different times to apply. Like some, I don't know, it's usually March through what, Zach, like September or something like that. So
Yeah, it usually starts sometime during a spring semester and end the following fall semester. There's a pretty extended application time frame for PA schools. But one thing to keep in mind, and this is for everybody, many PA schools work on what's called a rolling admissions. And so the longer you wait to apply, technically the fewer seats you're applying to. And so if you want to have your best possible chances of getting in, you want to apply as soon as that application process opens.
yes, that's a good point. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
I don't know if you said it or not, but what was your major here at Western?
I was a biology major and then did just the pre-PA route, which is just making sure I got the prerequisites I needed. And the reason I did that, you don't have to you can be any major you want, as long as you have the prerequisites. I liked science, I liked math. So a lot of the prereqs for PA school are already kind of intertwined in the biology degree. So that was nice.
I wanted to point out that at Western, there is a pre-PA path.
What did you say? I'm sorry. It may have been my internet, but you say there's a
It says, it says I have an unstable connection. At Western, there's a pre-PA pathway now available.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's the advising pathway. that can really fit with any major. It's just how we make sure that pre-PA students are on the right track with the courses they want to complete. And Serenity, you may have been talking about the integrated health sciences major where they have the pre-pro concentration.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have that major, and I think it was just getting off the ground when you graduated, but there is a major now where students can technically concentrate in pre-PA studies if they want to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, definitely use your advisors as a resource. They're a good resource for you to use, but also take it upon yourself to make sure that you're doing what you need to as well. So
Hannah, I've got a few questions for you.
yes.
My big curiosity is, how did you fit your clinical hours in, your patient care hours? Because you were a CNA, correct?
Yes.
When did you have time to do that?
I did those on the weekends and breaks. So throughout the week, I actually worked at the honors college, and then I did those on I would do, I don't know, like 1 to 2 shifts a weekend, and then when I was home for Christmas and we had those week breaks, I did like 30 to 40 hours a week in the summers. That's when I really, because I didn't take really any like summer classes. I may have took like 1 or 2, but my schedule allowed me to basically work 30 to 40 hours a week. So that's what I did. And going in, I only had 800. I'm going to tell you guys that. I'm going to tell you guys some of my stats, but I only had like 800 patient care hours. Some come in with more, some come in with less. Some PA schools require you to have a certain amount of hours. So the school I'm going to, I don't think did. But so that's why it's important also to look at those schools early that you're wanting to apply to make sure you're fitting those requirements to apply.
Okay, and I don't know if you saw the question posted in the chat.
Oh, the chat. Oh,
Yeah,
gosh,
but I can read it to you.
okay.
So the student stated they know that schools have different course requirements or hour requirements. They were wondering how you figured out what the schools you were applying to required and how you fit all of those different requirements in for every school, since it feels like a lot when you're looking at the different schools and what all of them require.
Yeah, that's a good question. I printed, there's a website, Zach, and you may know what website this is, but Miss Sharp recommended it to me. It's a website where you type in basically like where you'd like to go to PA school at like a state, and it kind of gave you like their stats like all in one. What is that called? It was a great resource though. But I kind of like printed mine out, the schools that I was interested in. I didn't get too crazy with it. Like I think there was like 8. And I printed out like that page, kind of highlighted, made notes, and I kept up with that way. Also, a good way to do that is make a spreadsheet. And you can put the amount of hours you need. If the GRE is a requirement, the prereqs, most of them have like the same prereqs, but that's also a good way to keep up with it, make a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets, so.
I'm going to guess that it's paeaonline.org, which is Physician Assistant Education Association.
Yeah, that sounds right. And like you basically just type in, like I typed in like North Carolina, South Carolina, and it just brought up all these different schools. And so I kind of picked out the ones I was interested in, the ones that I wasn't as much, and went about it that way.
I have another question.
Yes.
I was curious to know what the interview process is like for, when you're applying to schools, and if you have any pointers as far as that process goes.
That's a good question. So they're all a little different. My interview, I had it was like almost a full day. We were in there. They broke us off into groups, and we had 5 minutes with like each. They had different of the staff members in different of these little rooms, and we had like 5 minutes basically for them to ask us the question and us to give them our best answer. And they broke us off, and so gosh, it's been kind of a while ago since I've done that, but some of the questions I remember one that stuck out to me was that I think it was like a friend came in with back pain and they wanted like pain meds, and basically you couldn't find a reason for them to have back pain, but then they tell you that, oh, I'm really just stressed out. And like, would you prescribe it? And I was like, no, I'd go by the FDA guidelines. Also, it's not good to be treating usually friends or family members, however you have a connection. What was another one? Another one that got me was tell me something about yourself that was not on your resume. And that's hard to come up with because I feel like you put all your pertinent information on your resume. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know what else you need to know. So I think I went with like, I have a good support system. I talked about my family and how close I am with my family. And I think I said I like dogs or ride horses or something like that. But I was not expecting that one and it threw me off. I'm trying to think of the other ones. I think they asked me why I chose PA school. That's like a typical, but I used a resource. If you go online, you just type in like common PA interview questions. I took a lot of different ones that I saw in a lot of different sources, the common ones, and I kind of put them in a Word document and answered them and typed them out the best that I could answer them, and reviewed those things. So they were like fresh in my head and they were organized. So like when maybe I got to the interview process, I would remember what I had written down or at least like little blurbs about it. So it was more organized and it was fresh on my mind. And I reviewed that before my interview because I printed it out. I think I had like, I don't know, 10 to 15 questions. And then my interview process, I did something really cool. We had like lunch with the other PA students. Usually they try to integrate the students that are also there at the school. And I don't know if they have, I think they did have a little say so. And like, yeah, I really like, I was impressed by this person or not. I don't know how much of that affected their decision or not. Another advice I have for interviews is one, to wear closed-toed shoes. That may not seem like a big deal, but I feel like it is the way you present yourself. I wore a pantsuit. I wore a nice pantsuit, definitely dress business professional. I would wear a pantsuit or like a skirt and a blazer, but wear closed-toed shoes because you're really not going to be in the medical field wearing open-toed shoes. It's not safe. And I know that's a small detail, but I feel like it's important. And another thing I did was I did a mock interview. I did mine. I was part of the Honors College, so I did mine with Emily Sharp and why have I forgot his name? He teaches anatomy. You know what I'm talking about, Zach. He teaches anatomy. Oh my goodness.
Dr. Matthews.
Dr. Matthews. God, I don't know why I forgot that. He was one of my favorite professors. And that really helped because they asked me a bunch of different questions. They gave me feedback. It was very much like the real scenario. I think I was even more nervous with them because I actually knew them and I didn't want to let them down. There's also different PA like resources offer mock interviews. Even if it's just like a person. I told my mom, I gave my mom some questions. I'm like, Mom, like ask me these so I get comfortable with like answering out loud. Because sometimes it's really easy to type down words, but when you're like put on the spot about something, sometimes it's hard to come up with the best things to say. So that's definitely a resource I used. Let's see, I'm trying to think of what else about the interview process. Mainly just be yourself. And that sounds, everybody's going to tell you that, but that's really it. They're wanting to see who you are as a person. They're going to know if you're putting on a show or not. You know, they want to see that you're genuine and, yeah, just be yourself, show your personality. So that makes you be apart from the others. I just saw the chat. I feel like my professors, so we're online at MUSC this semester, and some of them are better about checking the chat, and some are like, I get where they get that from now. I'm like, how is that not so hard? But it's harder than it looks. So hold on, I'm trying to think.
And I'm watching this for you.
Okay.
So it's just one less thing you've got to worry about.
Okay.
I think the next question that was posed that you haven't necessarily already answered is, do you think being in the Honors College helped your application?
I think being in an honors college helped my application because I think it was just another thing on my resume that set me apart from others. Also, I think the honors college gave me opportunities as well that I feel like I wouldn't have had. It also held me to like a good standard of just keeping my grades up in general because they look at that in PA school. I got different opportunities to go to like luncheons and different things that I could put on my resume. which were nice. I also worked in the Honors College. I was super close to the staff in the Honors College. And if you can, I would advise, like if you can have a job, be involved on campus, do something else with your time that shows that you have time management skills, and that'll show. And then I think did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And then somebody posed a question that I think you might find fun to answer.
Okay.
How important is it to look at a program's accreditation?
Oh gosh.
And what is the
We're
difference
going
between statuses like continued, provisional, etc.? And I mean, that's a question that's up to you to answer. I can always answer it as well.
So I didn't know if I was going to mention that, Zach, but I'm sure you kind of like knew because I was not. Yeah, I figured you knew, but I was trying to like kind of just not go down that rabbit hole if I didn't have to. But here we
Yeah.
are, and I will.
Well, I think it's valuable information. When I was
think it
talking to
is.
Emily Sharp earlier today, she's like,
I missed it.
I hope she talks about that because I think it's valuable information. So she says hi. She said she might not be able to make it, but she does say hi, and she was hoping that you would discuss this as well.
Yeah, totally. I'm an open book for you guys. If you can learn from me and my mistakes, feel free. But so that is a very interesting question for me because I originally was not an MUSC student, and when I say MUSC, I'm meaning my school that I go to. So I originally applied and started PA school in January. This is going to throw you guys for a loop. You're like, what is this girl doing? She's lying. No, but I originally started PA school in January of 2020 at Lenore Ryan University, where I interviewed at, which is where I was telling you about all like my interview experience and different things. And I was a PA student there from January to May, and they had accreditation status of not provisional. I think it's provisional. It's not where they're like on probation. It's provisional. So they were going to be, evaluated again, and they were going to then have to apply for accreditation, like it's like continued or where they're good. So anyways, I went there first, and in May we learned that my program was shutting down. So they did not apply for continued accreditation. So they were hoping they were going to be able to teach my class out because we just came. So there was the class of 2023, the class of 2020, the class of 2021, and the class of 2022, which was my class. Well, the APA said you can teach, Lenore Ryan can teach the class of 2020 and 2021 out, but the class of 2022, is going to have to transfer to another school. So I got that through an email, like that wrecked. I was like, oh, this is over. Like, I'm never going to become a PA. And this was all on Zoom. So this was during a pandemic. We were online. We had no idea what was going on. We had to meet through Zoom, where they informed us that, yeah, Lenore Ryan University does not have a PA program anymore. They may in a couple years, and that they couldn't teach us out. So we were going to have to transfer somewhere. So anyways, then we were finding different places. I was like back to the drawing board. I was like you guys, like looking at different places, like what were their stats? Would I have to reapply again? Because they were hoping they could just transfer us to another school without having to do the application process and stuff again. But we didn't know. Well, anyways, MUSC, somehow they were contacting different schools, and MUSC took my whole class. So I was originally going to Lenore Ryan University in Hickory, North Carolina, and I lived off campus. I lived actually at home because I only lived like 30 minutes away from there, to moving to Charleston, South Carolina, and going to a completely different school in like a matter of a month. And it was crazy. So before that happened, I would have been like, oh, like accreditation. I wasn't looking at accreditation as much when I applied, but I will tell you that it is important. And yeah, it's something to be aware of. I don't know that I'd make it your decision factor on it. I'd say if they're on probation, I would definitely try to I would call and ask why they're on probation, for sure. Because I know Gardner-Webb was on probation when I was applying, because that was one of the schools I wanted to go to. And I asked why, and I think they said it was because of like mainly just like their web page and different things. So I would call and ask why, but I would try to stay away if they're on probation. If they're provisional, like LR was, then, I mean, you're taking a gamble, as I know now, but that's like a very rare chance. I think that's only happened like a couple times in like PA history. So I wouldn't. It's definitely something to look at.
Hannah, do you want me to add some more information on that question?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So you've got provisional status, you've got continuing status, and you have probational status. Provisional means that a college is working to be accredited. And so you're applying there. Usually, like Hannah said, if a school is provisional, they're probably going to get accredited. There are reasons why they won't get accredited, but it's not often that a school is in provisional status and doesn't go to continuing status where they've been fully approved. Probational status is definitely, again, as Hannah said, definitely something that's more concerning to look at. If a school's on probational or probationary status, it means that something has been, they've been notified of something not being correct about their program, and they've been given a period of time in which they have to fix it. It can be as simple as a website. It could be something a bit more major with an issue with their curriculum. It all depends, and that is why it's important to call if you see a school is on probationary status if you're looking to go to that school. Because if it's probationary, if it's provisional, there is a chance that you could enroll, and in the time you're enrolled there or before you start, they lose their certification, and then you don't actually have a program to go into. Because with most healthcare fields, if a school is on probationary or provisional status and you graduate from that program, you will not be able to take the tests that are required for you to become fully licensed as X doctor in whatever field. So that is definitely something you want to think about. A lot of times it's not something that should really sway your decision one way or another, because usually programs have it in their best interest to get out of whatever bad scenario they're in that's causing them to be in probationary or provisional status, but sometimes it does happen. There's a student asking for clarification on your hours. I know you spoke about your patient care hours, clinical hours. They're curious if you had volunteer hours that were required. If so, how did you meet those?
Yeah, so definitely I'm just gonna say patient care hours are the most important versus like volunteer and shadowing hours, but I did have around 60 shadowing hours, and I would recommend to not get those all from one provider. I would try to like pick a couple different specialties if you can get into. Now some are like easier. I picked like primary care and urgent care, and then I shadowed a traveling PA. So I would try to pick a couple different specialties. I wouldn't try to do it all with one, but I think 60 is a good number. You don't have all the time in the world, but 60 is a good number. And then for volunteer hours, I think I did around 50 to 100. I volunteered. My mom's a teacher. I volunteered a lot at like to tutor at her elementary school, and then like proctor EOGs and different things. And then I also volunteered. I ride horses, so at the barn, I have my horse at a stable, and they have horse camps and different things. So I like volunteered my time teaching others how to ride in horse camps, because just to share my love with horses, I thought that was something fun. And then I think there's also like clinics. I mean, it'd be good to get into. I wish I would have done that. Maybe got into more like of some like clinics and different things that I could have volunteered at, some health clinics. So.
Yeah, and Hannah brings up a good point. Like, seeking out your volunteer hours, the big thing with volunteer hours, as long as there's somebody there to supervise you who can sign off on the fact that you did volunteer, you can usually get your volunteer hours doing anything you're passionate about. Hannah volunteered to teach people how to ride horses. I really enjoy photography, so I've actually done some pro bono photography work for nonprofit organizations. If you know you enjoy doing something and you are happy giving your time doing that item, you can probably find volunteer opportunities that are associated with that and get your hours super simply. Hannah, we got another question. Were you exposed to scholarship or other financial opportunities when pursuing PA school, or do you know if they are common for students from your experience? And that's a good question. That's not one that I could easily answer.
Yeah, that is a good question. So scholarships were definitely easier to get in undergraduate. Once you get into grad school, I think this is like almost with any program, grad, doctorate, it's harder to get scholarships. I haven't personally gotten any scholarships. I've used student loans. I've used the Grad Plus loan. There's another loan, the Grad Plus and something else. So yeah, mainly I've just done loans. I haven't found it very easy to get scholarships, but I found it easy to get loans, although you'll have to pay that back. There are chances, though, when you get out of PA school, to apply or get a job somewhere that'll either reimburse you or help you out with your student loans. Sometimes if you agree to work in like a rural healthcare area or medically underserved, they'll pay either a portion of your loans or all of your student loans. So that's something I'm looking into more of than trying to get scholarships right now. I mean, it's hard being in PA school and having so much on your plate and then trying to get scholarships. And honestly, I don't see that there's a lot of opportunities for that from my experience. So I just try to do well in school and to learn it. I mean, it's just a lot being in PA school and then trying to worry about so many other different things. So, and also going into service, I think they'll pay off your student loans. And so that's also another idea.
All right. And let's see, how did you document all of your patient care hours and then all of your volunteer hours in preparation for your interviews and applications?
That's a good question. So during your PA application, they go into kind of detail about wanting to know, your volunteer, but like what you did, what you learned. One of the things that I did on my application is like I put down some traits that I felt that strengthened, like from that experience that helped me strengthen those traits, like time management, or can't remember all what I put. That was like a little blurb I added, because they'll like want you to write down your patient or your hours, where it was at, and kind of like a blurb of what you did. And then sometimes I'd put like what I learned, some different things. But I like Excel, or you can do it on Word. But I did like a document where I put the name of wherever I volunteered or shadowed, the hours in which I did that, like the time of the day and the hours, and then just like a small blurb of like what I did, just like a couple sentences. And then I would have whoever I was with to sign off on it. And I have a little spot for that. So therefore, when I went back, I could calculate all my hours. I could see what I did, and I had proof of it. That's what I personally did. And then when I did shadow, I also took notes. So that's also a thing that you might want to look into. I just took like a small little note book and just took notes on like little things. And thankfully, the PAs I shadowed were really good about explaining, like after we got out of the patient's room, they kind of explained what went on, why they did what they did, and just kind of broke it down for me. And I kind of wrote some of that stuff down. So if that's allowed, of course, ask before you do that. But yeah, I just kept like a Word document. I had different columns and different rows I kind of made, and then I could just add on to it. I just kept it on my computer. Or I printed it out actually, so they could sign it. They don't necessarily need to sign it but I thought it was something good to have. When you do apply though, they'll ask for like the person's name, usually the person's phone number. I don't know that they ever contact those people, but it's good to have proof of it.
I had another quick question. I'm sorry, I keep just shooting questions at you. This is sort of for Zach and you. Would the Lilly Award criteria, we record that information for all of the volunteer hours that we, use for that award. Are we able to like print that or track that information? Because you have to kind of explain what you learned and what you did. Could that help people?
And I don't know if you did Lilly Awards when you were here. Yes, if you're doing anything for Lilly Awards and it's directly related to volunteer hours, however you document that information for the Lilly Awards can certainly be used as like your own personal documentation information for the application process. When you go in for the application process, the application is standardized. It's like you're filling out a Google Doc, which is an oversimplification, but there's going to be boxes where you're filling in information. And so you don't need a specific document. You just need to have it documented. And that is for your ease, such that when you go in, you know exactly what you're typing into each box. And the reason they ask for the contact information for the people who you volunteered under during that time is if there's a discrepancy, or if they have some reason that they want to contact those people and verify that you did those volunteer hours, they have that information. And so that's why, as Hannah said, it's really important to keep that contact information and also document what you did during that time. Because depending on how you're getting your volunteer hours, you could be volunteering at a place where hundreds of people volunteer on a weekly basis. And if you have that documentation paperwork and they end up getting this question, they could then contact you. You could say, this is what I did on this day, kind of refresh their memory. And usually that goes a long way. But as she said also, I don't know that they very often check those hours. Usually they're probably going to do that if they see some sort of discrepancy in your application. And that's when they get more concerned and they start actually looking into that information.
Thanks.
So another tidbit I just want to add, this is kind of random and I don't know what made me think of this, but I wish I would have known this in undergrad. And I mean, this is like random, but I have a Surface Pro now, and it allows me to be on, I have like OneNote downloaded, and I can download PowerPoints and I take notes off of, it's like an iPad basically. And I just remember being in anatomy and printing off so many PowerPoints using so much ink, and there was never enough room for me to write all my notes. And I didn't have like a Surface Pro or anything then, like a touch screen computer or whatnot that I could take notes off of. But I really wish, if you do have that resource, to use it, and even for PA school, not just an undergrad, but it's nice in PA school because we are taught a lot off of PowerPoints. So it's easy to just download a PowerPoint. You can download it into OneNote, and then you have like, I have my little pen here that I can write with, and it can change colors. I can highlight with it. I can draw. So that is one little thing. Like, if you just kind of remember that when you are going to PA school, if you're looking for like, oh, what should I get to take notes off with? And I really like the Surface Pros, or even like an iPad, anything you can take notes off, download OneNote. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, and I'll add to that for Hannah. A lot of schools are actually starting to include a tablet device of some sort in the curriculum process. It's going to be a part of your fees, like the students pay for it inevitably, but a lot of schools do that now. I want to say every student I've had present over the past year and a half have mentioned that they have an iPad or a Surface Pro or some other tablet that they use to take notes. And I think the industry as a whole is also moving in that direction. And so they're trying to get those tools out to the students as soon as possible. And so maybe if you're in the market right now for a new computer, that could be something that you might want to look into, because it's going to make you more comfortable with that process in the long run.
Yeah, that's a good point, Zach, because Lenore Ryan actually provided our Surface Pros, and we were able to keep those since we paid for them after we we transferred to MUSC. And so I didn't know anything about them, but I love it. But MUSC does not, I don't know why, but they don't provide, they have a requirement. You have to, whatever your device is, it has to meet those requirements. But they don't provide it, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, it was nice to be provided that. So you may just want to make sure before you go and buy your own stuff. But if they do want you to, that's something to think about. So, any other questions?
Zach, you had mentioned a website. You said paea.org, I thought, and I checked it, and that is not correct. So I must have misheard you.
Let's see. paeaonline.org.
PAEA online.
Yep. And then there's also it's aapa.org.
aapa.org.
Yep.
Okay,
And those are
thank you.
you're welcome. Those are the two primary websites. If anybody's looking for more information on PA schools based on region, state, school specific information, those are the two websites that are most regularly referenced, at least from like my governing body, the National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions. Those are the websites they recommend. And if all else fails, I promise you, just Google PA schools by state and you will find the resources you need. Just because so many people are out there doing that. There are plenty of websites with that information, but those are the two websites that are run and owned by the governing body that certifies and licenses PAs.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. And Hannah, I got one more personal question for you.
All right.
Why did you apply to the schools you applied to?
Okay. So I am kind of like a lemon in this aspect. I graduated in I said December of 2019 from Western, and I only applied to Lenoir-Rhyne University because I was an early graduate, and I didn't meet like a lot of schools, like they didn't want you to have any prereqs, but LR allowed you to have like 2 prereqs, and I was like, okay, like I was fine with taking a gap year, but I just wanted to get the experience of applying. I didn't think I'd actually get in. And just, just to have the experience if I did get an interview, but I actually did. So I really only applied to one school. I got into the school I wanted. I didn't think that would happen. So, yeah. So what was your question? Can you restate your question again? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You answered the question. Which schools did you apply to and why? So,
Yeah. So
answered
I
the
only applied to
question.
that one, and because it was close to home, it was only 30 minutes down the road. So I saved money when I was there from not having to pay rent and whatnot. But now I am in Charleston, which is an awesome place to be, but it is expensive here. So that kind of went out the window. And then also one of the things I applied to LR was because of the small class size. Um, they only had 30, but now I'm in a class of 90, which is fine. It's going great, but well, my world got switched around like over the summer. So yeah, definitely like look at the class size. You get more of a personal relationship with your professors when there's a smaller class, as well as you get to know your classmates, which are a great resource, because if you think about it, once you guys all become PAs, you never know when you might, need another PA as a resource, either, to refer a patient to or for a job or whatnot. So that's really nice to get to know your classmates. It's easier in a smaller class setting. What are other reasons? I think that's mainly it. And the cost is about the same for, you want to look at the cost, but cost is pretty similar for most PA schools. And one of the other reasons were they didn't have a minimum requirement or a maximum, or they didn't have a minimum requirement for patient care hours. So their application, like they didn't have a lot of like requirements for that, which was good for me. Because some require you to have like 500 patient care hours. Some don't require any. You should have them, but they don't have like a specific requirement. And then some like require like 1,000. So I didn't have 1,000. So of course I couldn't apply to those schools.
Can you share with us your experience of what it's like to go to PA school?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a little different now that we're online, but when we were actually in class, we would usually start at 9 o'clock each day, and I would be there sometimes till 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then I would usually get there early around 8, and I would study like an hour before class because I just found that kind of getting up early and like studying, my brain was still fresh because after you're in class that long, and at the end of the day, you're just kind of exhausted. And then I went home. I think I got home usually around 6. I would usually take an hour break to eat dinner and to just do something that was not school related, just to get my mind off school. I would study a couple hours, so I'd say I'd probably study from like 7:30 to like 10 o'clock that night. I'd study like 2 to 3 hours in the evening. And then I'd really kind of hit it hard on the weekends. I caught up a lot on the weekends. I'd study a lot you feel like you can't take a break. Like there's so much stuff because it's an overwhelming amount. You're only going to school for 2 years and you're learning so much, and they cram it all in there. So you're like, oh, I've got so much to do. I don't need to take a break. But I think it's a good point for your mental health I usually take an evening off, and either 2 evenings off or an evening and a morning. So like I'll usually take like Friday evening off and sometimes Saturday evening, but study throughout the day Saturday. So I think it's important to give yourself breaks. Now with us being online, it's weird. I actually only go to class from 8 to 12, and they record lectures. So I'm kind of more of a night person if I have the opportunity to be. I like to study at night. I never go to bed like past like 11:30. I usually get in bed by that time. So I don't pull all-nighters or anything. I wouldn't suggest that unless you're just desperate. So right now I usually do like, I'd say I study around 4 to 5 hours a day. So right now I'm like scheduled. So I usually study from 2:30 to 5 or 2 to 5, go eat dinner or fix something or whatnot, and kind of take a break for about an hour, hour and a half. And then I'll do homework till about like 10. So from like, I don't know, 6:30 to 10 or something, 7 to 10. It just depends because we have to watch lectures too because they record them. So sometimes I'm watching lectures and not exactly just studying the material. So
Someone in the chat asked how you went about arranging your shadowing opportunities.
yeah, so the people I shadowed were actually like family friends. One lady went to church with us. One lady I actually rode horses with and knew her family really well. And so I just kind of, oh, we were Facebook friends because I told you we were family friends. I messaged them on Facebook and I was like, hey, like, I'm wanting to take the PA route, or even if you're not sure, and just kind of say like, I would like to shadow somebody. Are you willing, I don't know, to let me shadow you or something? It's harder to get in. It's easier to get into like primary care, urgent care, or like private practice settings versus like emergency or surgery. It's really hard to be able to shadow any of that. I don't even know how you would go about that. I don't know, but I shadowed urgent care, primary care. I would just kind of, whoever your primary care physician, it doesn't necessarily have to be a PA. I definitely would shadow a PA, but you can also shadow like doctors, if that's somebody you can get into, and just ask the people that you go to, either like for primary care or whatever, or if you have family friends, or if you're, so yeah, that's how I went about it.
Yeah, and to build off that a little bit, piggyback off of what Hannah was saying, unfortunately, Western is not the most dense area when it comes to medical opportunities for students to get those shadowing hours. And so what she did is really what we advise most students to do. Look for people you know, start with doctors you're familiar with, ask around, and if you run out of a network there, pick out a phone book and start calling offices just to see if they'd be willing to let you shadow. As an industry, a lot of doctors are going to be willing to let people shadow them if those individuals present themselves as professional and they don't think they're going to cause them any issue, because doctors are interested in helping people, and letting others shadow them so that they can get a better understanding of the field is another helping method that they usually enjoy. It may stress them out, and so that's why we try to leave the people over at Harris Medical alone as much as possible, because they are in a area where there's probably a lot of demand to get those shadowing hours. But at the same time, there are opportunities out there. It's just the path to those opportunities are going to look different for everybody. And she also referenced potentially shadowing doctors, even though you're wanting to go to a PA school. That is an option, but if that is the route you're going to go, make sure to communicate with the schools that you're applying to make sure that is okay with them. It is okay with many schools, because shadowing a PA and shadowing an MD or an OD, they're very similar. Their day-to-day activities are very similar, even though they work kind of in different areas of the field. So shadowing can be very similar, but if you're going to shadow somebody other than a PA, make sure to check with the schools you're applying to make sure that's okay with them.
That's a good point, Zach. And yeah, just mainly just put yourself out there and be professional about it. Other people understand. They were in your shoes once as well. You know, they were needing hours, and so they understand. And especially for the PAs, you know, we're here to educate others about the profession, and I'm sure a lot of them would be, you know, willing if they have the time. Now, some just, you know, they'll tell you, like I've asked, and they're like, I just really don't have the time to let you shadow. And then because they also, when you're shadowing, they have to, you know, do their job, but then they usually come out and kind of explain to you what's going on because you're not going to know. And so they have to also have the time to do that, and I think they understand that. So they'll be upfront with you. Just present yourself professionally and put yourself out there, and yeah.
And we are getting close to our hour time limit. I try not to make these presentations too much longer than an hour when we're talking with students who are in school right now. As you said before, you've got plenty of studying to do. So does anybody else have any more questions of immediate need? If you have a question later on or something else pops up, feel free to send it to me. I can send it to Hannah and she can respond whenever she has time and I can get it back to you. But if anybody has any more questions, I think we got enough time for another 2 questions or so. All right, going once, going twice.
Were there any in the chat? I think I
Okay,
saw.
so one person was curious if you'd be willing to share what your science GPA was when you applied.
Yeah, so that's a good point. There's like your science GPA. That's something I actually forgot about. Your science GPA and then like I guess your regular overall. But I believe my science GPA was like 3.7, 3.8. And my regular GPA was pretty up there, like 3.8, I think, as well. Or I don't know. I don't think it was a 3.9. It wasn't 3.9. So it was either like I think it was 3.7, 3.8, somewhere around there. So.
All right. And that's it for what I'm seeing in the chat.
Yep, that's it for me.
All right. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all for attending tonight's presentation. And Hannah, thank you for taking time out of your, I am sure, very busy schedule to talk with some future WCU alumni. I know I appreciate it. I'm sure they appreciate it as well. But good luck with everything else going on. And I might be reaching out to you again next year to have another presentation when you're doing your rotations.
That sounds great to me. I've enjoyed my time with you guys. So my advice is just to go for it. So.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
You guys have a good night.
Thank you. You do the same.